It was the year 2607. Many new planets and civilizations were getting to know each other. Some planets had even started to fight each other. In such an environment, there was a planet whose interests were at odds with Earth. This planet was called Caprica. Caprica said that Earth had too many moons in the universe and argued that it didn't obey the laws of universal space. It even once shot down a satellite of Earth called LV 426. These tensions were the result, and peace has not been restored since. Every year, dozens of aliens from the planet Caprica were arrested on Earth for spying. Caprica intelligence was deeply disturbed by the failure of all its agents around the world and intensified its efforts. They were trying different ways, but they were all still getting caught. Caprica Technology then offered to design a human-shaped robot and send it to Earth, and he did. The idea made perfect sense to the Caprican aliens. Perhaps the humans would not realize that this robot was a spy, and the mission would be a success. Caprica and eventually a robot agent called Endor was designed. From the outside, Endor looked so human-like that it was impossible to recognize that he was a robot. This robot even had emotions, just like humans. It could cry, laugh, and sometimes even dream. After Endor made his final preparations, he was sent to Earth in a cargo spaceship. After entering the world without any problems, he began his spy activities. The first task given to Endor by Caprica was to visit the parking lots on Earth as if he was playing sports. Caprica's intelligence unit would then send him around the world every day. He was aware of what people were saying, of their lives. Endor would go for a walk every afternoon, fully dressed and following commands from Caprica. Endor's mission today was to visit Washington Park. He went to the park as usual and started walking at a light pace without talking to people. He responded to commands from Caprica. Sometimes he would turn his head to the right or left and continue his walk. But this time, something unexpected happened. Endor suddenly stopped walking and looked somewhere. He stared at her. Caprica was telling him to keep going, to turn his head, but these commands were useless. Endor glanced from Isabella, who was out for a walk with her dog, and he wouldn't take it apart. Caprica was trying to turn the system off and on again, but to no avail. Finally, Endor's camera turned off, and Caprica was able to send he couldn't give. When Endor had been designed, it had been endowed with so many human characteristics that over time it had developed desires, tastes, emotions. And that evening, he fell in love with Isabella and voluntarily turned off his camera. He no longer responded to frequencies from Caprica, living a life like humans. He even left this region. He even had friends. No one understood that he was a robot. Only sometimes he had strange memories with humans as robots. Once his neighbor Noah invited Endor over for dinner. No matter how many excuses Endor made, defeated, he agreed to go to dinner. On the evening of the invitation, Noah cooked a variety of dishes, set the table, and waited for Endor. After a while, Endor and they sat down at the dining table. Endor didn't know what to do. He was a robot and he wasn't eating. He just started imitating Noah. He used his spoon to his mouth, but he couldn't. The steel lining in his mouth made it impossible for him to eat. He was afraid that Noah would realize he was a robot, so he found an excuse. He wanted to get out of the house. Fortunately, he was able to escape early, saying he had an appointment with someone else, and Noah didn't understand a thing. After the night he saw Isabella, he thought only of her. He opened the records in his memory and analyzed Isabella's face over and over again. Writing poems to her, he was drawing pictures of her. She felt an irresistible desire for him. Sometimes she couldn't make sense of it herself and questioned whether she was a human or a robot. He had made up his mind that he would go to the park again. When it started to get dark, he set off and came to the park, but Isabella was gone, analyzing all the faces but none of them. On the second night, he walked around the park again, and again she was not there. He was starting to lose hope when on his way back he saw her coming out of a veterinarian's office. He analyzed her face, and it was a 100% match to Isabella's face. She had brought her dog to the vet, and she gathered her courage and approached him. About animals, Isabella might be interested if he spoke. He gathered his courage and approached her. He asked her the name of her dog. Isabella told him that her dog's name was Lucy. They started a casual conversation. Endor the robot had all the knowledge, and this impressed people. The fact that he knew about dogs also impressed Isabella. He liked it. That evening they exchanged numbers and went home. Endor the robot was very happy. He was very happy that evening. He went home, but he got into trouble, unaware of what was to come. At 3 o'clock there was a knock on his door. It was pitch dark, and he was not expecting company at this hour. He approached the door and asked who it was. The person at the door said it was the police. Endor thought he had been arrested for spying and had to open the door, but it was not the police. When the door opened, two men rushed at Endor. These were the professors who had designed Endor. They told Endor that he had betrayed his mission and that they would smuggle him back to Caprica. But Endor didn't want to go back, and he gave them a lot of resistance. There was a big brawl. The two professors had Endor lying down and were trying to fiddle with his wiring. Since Endor was a robot, physically stronger than both humans, he managed to escape their grasp and denounced the two professors to the world police for spying. Professors. He was deported to Caprica. Endor managed to stay here, but his real joy was that he would not be separated from Isabella. The next evening they met Isabella in Washington Park. Endor came with flowers in his hand. They started a nice conversation about animals again, and when night came, Endor he gave her a ride home and they parted. As the days passed, the meetings became more frequent, and they were now getting into more intimate topics. Endor, Isabella's family. She knew about his past traumas and even about the ex-boyfriend who had left him. In fact, one day when Endor was escorting her home, Isabella suddenly recognized Endor kissed her. Things were getting serious, but Endor couldn't grasp it. After all, he was a robot, and he couldn't give this girl a future. They did. As the days passed like this, Endor's phone rang at noon. It was Isabella. He picked up the phone and they started talking. Isabella invited him to watch a movie. Endor accepted without thinking and went to his house in the evening. They started watching a science fiction movie with popcorn and Coke. It was getting darker, and both of them were engrossed in the movie. It was getting dark too. Isabella was yawning and getting sleepy. Endor was a robot. He didn't need sleep. He never slept. Soon Isabella was asleep. Endor carried his human lover to bed and lay down next to her. The morning hours were approaching. The sun was beginning to rise, but Isabella was asleep, wrapped in Endor's iron body. Endor had no complaints and was happy. Isabella soon opened her eyes. He opened it and was surprised to find Endor in his bed. What surprised him even more was what an uncomfortable, hard body Endor had. He broke the embrace and got out of bed. Endor followed him. Together they went to the sink. Isabella washed her face and brushed her teeth, and they went to the kitchen to have breakfast. Isabella made breakfast. He started to eat. Endor was trying to imitate her again. He brought the fork to his mouth like Isabella. It hit his mouth and fell to the floor. He couldn't eat. They went out and walked around together, but there was a problem. Endor's steel parts were due for maintenance, but there was no one to service his parts. Moreover, if it was discovered that he was a robot spy in the world, it could get him into trouble. Only the professors who designed it could service Endor, but that was the last time he had fought and reported it to the world police. There was no way he could return to Caprica. As Endor and Isabella were walking, a loose screw of Endor's fell to the ground. Isabella thought it had fallen out of Endor's pocket, and they kept walking, but every time Endor took a step, strange noises came from his rusty steel tools. Endor's system was sounding the danger alarm. When he took a few more steps, many pieces of him fell off his body and fell to the ground. Isabella could not understand the situation, got scared, and let out a scream. Endor tried to escape the area by activating the danger alarm, but his rusty system would not allow it. After some distance, he found himself on the ground. Isabella. He was crying. He was in shock. He called the world police. The police soon arrived on the scene and took the parts of the fallen robot back to the office. A scandal in the world it was happening. A human-shaped robot had arrived on their planet and no one noticed. Soon Endor told them that it was designed to spy on Caprica. Confessed, Endor was taken to court and sentenced to prison. He was very bored, watching the recordings of his memories with Isabella over and over again. He missed Isabella very much, but it was Isabella who turned him in. He was immobilized in prison. His system was about to fail. Prison had made him even more neglected. To get out of this prison and see Isabella again, after thinking about how to do it, he noticed the window in the prison cell. The window was protected by iron bars. To escape through the window But Endor was not human and could smash the bars with his physical strength. One night, while the policeman slept, he grabbed the iron bars and tried to tear it off. The bars crumbled under Endor's power. Endor escaped through the prison window and went to Isabella's house. He knocked on her door. Isabella opened the door, and when she saw Endor, she screamed again and called the police. Endor had no intention of going back to that prison. He started running with his rusty suits. The police were following him. Endor couldn't bear the pain of love any longer. He would stop himself now rather than rusting away in prison. He ran away from the cops, but he didn't want to go on living anymore. He went to a junk shop and surrendered himself. The scrap dealers dismantled all his systems and destroyed him. Endor was a robot defeated by love. He was defeated by Isabella.